Okay, so we'll keep going. I
was going to stop Angela from going because I wanted some. I want that.
I want what she's got. Yeah. You were talking earlier, Natasha, about that. Correct me if I'm wrong. That there actually has been a drop generally in the number of women who are on boards.
Particularly executive level, so that directorship level, particularly, the ASX top 100 companies. And I think, I know that you've asked a question that's specific to the sector, and, ironically, one in which it's clearly female dominated almost at every level that you've heard, professional, non-professional, managerial, etc., etc. But you're right, it's that executive level that women often don't crack. So even if it's a specific question, you can extrapolate a lot of the generalities across the board, and it is about, there's a combination of issues, and I know that people, whether it's the Equal Opportunity Commissioners or Sex Discrimination Commissioner on a federal level, grappling with issues like all of these issues now. Mentoring is a big part of it, men and women mentoring. It's also just being a little more creative. I find it extraordinary now that I'm out of the political parliamentary space, the number of men on boards, including chairs, who will ring up and say, well, look, we need a woman. Just thinking professional background, be great. Sort of maybe non-mainstream. There's a bit of a feel at the moment out of the box, a bit different. And, it's almost like it's tick a box time. There's a big debate about quotas. Oops, scary. So people are now actively, or certainly more actively, looking for women to fill that space. But and then you have those ridiculous political debates about, but if we have quotas, women aren't going to get there on merit, unlike all the men who've got there on merit, of course. So, but it's such a facetious debate, isn't it? I mean, it makes me so angry. But so there's mentoring, there's training, there's background, there's availability, and also what I find is there's kind of like this pool of acknowledged women, and I know this is the same in Queensland as it is in other eastern states, less so perhaps in South Australia because we're perhaps a bit smaller and a little further behind in the stats. But, we'll get so-and-so, because I've seen her, she's on a board, she's qualified, and so there's sort of this untapped pool that people sort of don't go to or know about. But of course, above all of that, we know, the debates, some of which I touched on today, but, just the commitments, the interruptions in professional and other working life, family commitments, etc. So I'm just got to the point where I don't know, maybe I've just become my humorless feminist self has sort of come to the fore these days, and I just get sick of the debates and the quota debate in particular, when it's just, go out there, be active, recruit, the talent is there, the background is there, and you have to allow some kind of flexibility so that women are getting onto boards, be they corporate or indeed the not-for-profit, in positions of not just, lots of us are members, but chairs as well.
Great. Did you want to comment on it?
I will actually pick up on that and say there's a comment that I think I need to share with you. I do a lot of leadership work, and it's actually with women across all levels of both government and non-government organisations. And a very consistent theme that comes through, especially in the early stages of let's do some leadership development work together, there's a couple of themes that come through. I'm afraid that if I open up to this kind of work, I'll expose myself as a fraud. I'll be found out that I'm actually not as good as others might think I am. All right, now I need to understand that better, but I hear that from women much more than I hear it from men who are coming into the leadership program. So it's that sense of I'm not quite sure I'm really as good as you think I am and I think I am. So whatever that's about, we need to understand better, it seems to me. And there's one other thing that I think is really important, and it's about how is one known? How do we, because you have to know who's there with great talent and capability already so that mentoring and coaching can happen. And so it's how do we know each other, and how do we know all of those wonderful people who are actually out there waiting and ready to do this work. And I think that's an issue for us. I'm not sure we know how to be known.
Catherine, what are you going to...
I was just going to say, in terms of, I think there's a lot of this is about storytelling as well. And again, if I reflect on my own experience in the education sector, which is obviously very highly feminised as well, and I know that as a sort of a young mum, having promotions within that sector, I used to look at the school principal and I'd think, I could never do that job. It just looks so hard. And I never ever remember one of my male principals ever standing up and saying, you know, you can do this, you can balance being a wife, being a mother, you know, being a professional and making choices and actually putting the balls in the air and still offering your best. I never ever heard a male principal ever tell me that. But I remember when I got to be a high school principal, I used to talk to lots of my staff and lots of women about this, and I'd say, you can do this. It's actually, you know, it's not, I don't get here at 7:30 in the morning and read the newspaper and have my lunch packed by my husband, but I work a different lifestyle to fit everything in. So you have to challenge the mental models about what that leadership looks like. But the women who get there have to be the storytellers. They've got to be very strong about challenging those mental models. No, I can't be here. I've got to drop off children, or you know, my child will come into the workplace this afternoon for a couple of hours, and I'm not going to apologise for that, because when everyone goes to bed tonight, I'll probably get my work done then, you know. So I think those conversations have to happen in feminised occupations. But can I also say, I think there's a learning about this too when we reflect on the Indigenous issue. As women, we're often attracted into occupations that we are attracted to because we want to nurture, we want to connect, we want to make a difference. All of those things are very important to us. And maybe getting to the top as a CEO is not important. And so again, it's about making those choices and having the right to make those choices within where it is that you want to work. And so, you know, I don't want to be in one of those buildings with all those people talking finance either, you know. Yeah. So I think we can make choices, but there's something to learn where you can nurture people in them.
Did you want to say something?
Just another phenomenon that I've observed more recently that I think needs some exploration is, certainly in our sector, there's a whole range of female leaders and people who've been activists in their life who for some reason become invisible. And they may go on to boards, but they actually feel that the younger emerging leaders have made them small and invisible somehow, and I don't observe that same thing happening to men. May just be our sector, but I think, you know, there may be something for us to explore there.
Interesting. What about this very topical issue at the moment about Fair Work Australia's decision about pay equity? In your opinion, how can we capitalise on that decision whilst balancing that demand around service delivery? One of the things I'm hearing from people is, well, that will all be fine. We're not going to get any more money. It'll mean that we'll go from a 5-day-a-week service to a 3 or 4-day-a-week service. That's some of the things that's been flowing. How do we capitalise on this thing? Yeah? Whoever wants to answer that can.
Yeah, because I'll make a process comment about this, because I happen to be working in the sector with quite a lot of people on the, you know, this last week when all of this became clear. And what was fascinating to me was the way the debate or conversation, but it was more of a debate, was constructed, and it was constructed in a way of this is something to be afraid of. This is something we need to be cynical about in terms of we're going to have to do more with less. It's going to mean we can't employ people. So there was a very interesting way I noticed of the beginning of that conversation, and the only comment I could make is it seemed to me we need to actually shift the paradigm for the conversation. I haven't got anything else to add, sorry.
I mean, I'm happy to add, I mean, I'll make a political comment, predictably, and obviously I touched on this in my comments this morning, but it is, the P word, the paradigm, it is about a paradigm shift. It is about, in terms of the politics and the media portrayal, because the debate is soon going to become about who's going to fund what and what's going to happen with those resources, i.e. will there be implications for service delivery and employers, etc. And how early and able you are to shape that debate will impact on whether or not, you know, it's the ASU or the Workforce Council or others getting attention, or whether it's ACCI and, you know, the various chambers of commerces and others that are going to come in and say, can't afford this. The politicians saying, look, we just can't find the funds. You're a good, well-meaning industry, but it's too hard. So I think that's why, you know, in some ways it's good to have this early ruling, and obviously it's good that Fair Work Australia is doing its job and is going to consult and come back with, you know, other information leading to the outcomes, but putting pressure on now. And I know that's a lot to say when you've got enough work to be doing, but obviously your affiliates, your representatives, your council being out there so that your public's on side too, because there's not one person in the community that I can think of that ever begrudges the concept or the idea of a pay rise in your sector. In fact, quite the opposite. They'd be the first through all the research and surveys to say, oh, you know, this is what I value, yeah, they deserve this. But ensuring that you get that momentum and use that so that the debate is not structured in a way which is, well, you want the money, you guys are going to be responsible for closing services, as opposed to that's not your decision, that's your leaders' decisions, your business and industry leaders, and in particular your state and federal governments. And I acknowledge, you know, Karen here, the work that Queensland governments have done, but there's more for them to do in the same way that you'll watch this political power play. You heard Karen refer to it, you know, there'll be some argy-bargy with the federal or the Commonwealth and state and territories. And you've seen it already. New South Wales are positioning themselves. Don't let your leaders position themselves. Sorry, it sounds easier to do than it is, but a lot of it will be campaigns on the grounds, what you talk about with your neighbours, your friends in the pubs, in the clubs, saying, wow, long overdue, this is going to be exciting for the state because we're going to see people rewarded for some of the work that they've been doing for a long time in an equitable way, but, you know, don't let them fool you.
So now's the time to actually step it up.
In a way, obviously, you don't want to alienate, and I don't underestimate the impact of resources for union and other groups as well, please. But yeah, I mean, I may have sounded facetious earlier about when talking about politicians, but I think reminders to politicians why this is so important. You know, we do this work at the coalface. We're the biggest employing industry. We're this, we're that. Just remember us, you know, whether you're sending them a ribbon or a happy photograph from the library or something that says, this is an industry that works for you. And what more pertinent time in Queensland's recovery and rebuilding to remind them you're not doing this because it's altruistic, you're not just doing it because you're good people and out of the goodness of your heart. You are workers and you're working hard for your state, and they must recognise and reward that. And I think there's a lot of media and political campaigning. So yeah, ramp it up if possible, but get community on side, because how can you get a community on side with a mining tax? How quickly did that happen? You know, mining tax on super profits, and suddenly 75% of the population said, oh, that's a bad thing. Oh, you know, we don't want to send the mining, construction industry broke, and regardless of your political views on that. But just think in terms of what a campaign that was. Well, unfortunately for you, it's now your time to... Good campaign.
Yeah, I was just going to absolutely support what Natasha said, and I would say make it a data-driven conversation. Start talking about the hard numbers of how many of you are employed in this industry. In regional areas, you're the largest growth employer, within regions. This whole notion about the skills shortage, when I look at the employment statistics, this is the sector where we need people most throughout the whole of Queensland. And so I think if you can get a data-driven conversation so that everyone who leaves is a foot soldier, knowing how many thousands of people and how many thousands of people you affect each time, so you continually got that same line.
And it's the same message.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions from the floor? There's one.